Welcome to Wild Side, your wild true crime podcast.
We're your hosts, who are sisters, storytellers, and truth seekers.
I'm Bailey, a therapist who is fascinated by all weird and dark human behaviors.
And I'm Chelsea, an educator here to unearth the facts behind the cases.
We cover true crime because some cases are just too dark to forget,
and others are too wild to ignore.
We're so glad you're here, so buckle up
and enjoy the ride. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday to us. Happy Wednesday to us. Okay, it's going to be a short and sweet intro before we get into the case, but as a friendly reminder, we have the interview with Dr. Burgess dropping Friday. You guys do not want to miss it because she's the bomb.com and kind of a hashtag boss babe.
Yeah, I've been listening to one of her books on Audible, and it is absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So I'm currently listening to Killer by Design, Murders, Mind Hunters, and My Quest to Decipher the Criminal Mind by Anne Burgess and Stephen Constantine. So if you are going to be doing a long drive and want to listen to profiling and FBI and all the things, I highly recommend.
Yeah. I was reading up on Anne a little bit, Dr. Burgess, and there was something that she had said. It was just like a quote somewhere. And basically, she interviewed so many serial killers, and she was so knee deep in like behavioral analysis and the field that like all of these killers knew her kids' names and would send like Christmas cards. And she was like, and it was at that point that I knew I had to like step back, you know?
Yeah.
But it was really tempting for us not to do Ed Kemper because we've been talking about doing him for a year and a half. But again, it's just one of those things that there are like a gazillion interview or cases on him. So I don't know, maybe one day. But this was one of the first cases that really, from my understanding, swung her into like profiling professionally, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's why we chose this case. And it's a good old Louisiana case. And yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot there.
Yeah. And I'm going to start us off with a quote. I'd turn around and beat one and then apologize for raping the other one. Sometimes I'd be nice and talk to them, but it's complex. There's so much involved that I don't understand. I don't know why I did certain things, why I raped some, why I beat some, why I burned some, and why I was nice to one but not another. I don't know. But I know it doesn't make sense.
And this man would later be known as Jon Barry Simonis, aka the Ski Mask Rapist. His crimes spanned over a dozen states, and he confessed to more than 80 rapes, though investigators believe the real number may be closer to 130. His victims were often couples, and his attacks were calculated to inflict maximum psychological damage. But this case isn't just about the crime. It's about how the FBI, with the help of pioneering forensic nurse and victimologist Dr. Anne Burgess, began to understand the mind of a serial sexual predator. Dr. Burgess's work helped shape the very foundation of criminal profiling, and her insights were absolutely instrumental in identifying and capturing Simonis. Today, our Wildsiders, we're diving deep into the life, crimes, and capture of Jon Barry Simonis, along with the groundbreaking work of Dr. Anne Burgess that helped bring him down.
Jon Barry Simonis was born in January 1951 in Lake Charles, Louisiana. On the surface, his early life seemed unremarkable. He graduated from Bloom Carroll High School in Ohio in 1969, where he was an all-state quarterback. After high school, he joined the U.S. Army, serving in Europe between 1973 and 1977. Simonis's promising future was at war with a secret obsession that was stronger than any achievement, award, or success. At just 15 years old, he began engaging in voyeurism, peeping into windows and watching women undress. He loved to be feet away from an unsuspecting female, knowing that he could be caught, but he always chose not to. He controlled how much anyone knew about his presence. This behavior escalated during his military service, where he was known for exhibitionism, exposing himself to strangers. Similar to his motive behind voyeurism, Simonis liked controlling the scene. He would expose himself simply to get a reaction, and that reaction was exhilarating to him. These early signs of deviance were dismissed or ignored, and Simonis continued to function in society. After he got out of the military and returned to Lake Charles in 1978, he worked as a lab technician and cardiology unit attendant, but his criminal behavior intensified. That same year, he was convicted for making obscene phone calls. What was unknown, however, is that he was also fondling women while they were under anesthesia, or making copies of their house keys while they were in operating rooms. It was like he had unrestricted access to plan, observe, and explore the depths of his deviance. When he was caught making obscene phone calls, he was formally reprimanded, but the charge was brushed aside with a suspended sentence and a recommendation for psychiatric help. Simonis didn't get help. Instead, he began a 3-year reign of terror.
Jon Simonis, in the search for control and power through fear, started by robbing women. It was a jolt of adrenaline, but the high just wasn't sustainable. His first known assault occurred on November 1978 during a burglary attempt. Simonis followed a woman home from a shopping center with the sole purpose of burglarizing. Once he was in the home, he realized the situation was easily controlled and that overpowering the female would be a simple task. Instead of simply stealing some pawnable items, he forced the woman to perform sexual acts. Simonis was obsessed with control. He wanted domination, humiliation, and to force women to be at his mercy. In the beginning, Simonis would target single women, and he would bind them with their own clothing and then vaginally rape them. When he first started out, he was not overtly violent, but as the number of victims grew, he started to incorporate things: handcuffs, duct tape, that kind of thing. Towards the end of his reign, the assaults became very violent. Simonis would often beat, slap, or burn his victims with cigarettes. And despite the growing number of victims, law enforcement struggled to connect the dots. The crimes spanned multiple jurisdictions, and Simonis left little to no physical evidence behind. He was simply a ghost, until the FBI was brought in and began to take notes.
Between 1978 and 1981, Jon Barry Simonis targeted middle-class suburban neighborhoods, often choosing homes with young couples. He would stalk his victims, sometimes watching them for days before striking. He would only enter homes between 8 p.m. and 1 a.m., and only if the doors or windows were unlocked. He wore a black ski mask, carried duct tape, and used gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints. Once inside, he would bind the women with tape, wrists, ankles, covering their mouth, and usually blindfold them. If the male partner was present, Simonis would force him to watch or listen as he assaulted the man's partner. In some cases, he made the man participate in humiliating acts. Survivors described him as cold, methodical, and eerily calm. You know, something, Bailey, that I found really odd when studying about Simonis was the fact that he was so patient and he was so committed, and he would spend ample time to gather information on his victims. It was reported that he would cut phone lines or slash tires so that if they did try to escape, they couldn't get away, they couldn't phone. But then he would also only attack at night, and he would only go for kind of this path of least resistance, right? He would only go for vulnerable houses. And I just kind of thought that was an interesting combination of being so meticulous, and it would seem almost like he wanted, the hunt, but then he would make sure that it was very, very easy for him to actually commit the crime.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I am curious if that is just a characteristic to perpetrators or rapists, or, how locked in they get, or if it's some other kind of co-occurring thing, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so when they first started really trying to get an idea of who this guy was, they just kind of thought that he was, attacking easy targets. But then once they really figured out who he was, they figured out that he actually had an above intelligent or above normal IQ. Above average is the word I'm looking for. Sorry. He had an IQ of a 128, and they believe that he used his intelligence to find the best fit for the crime that he was wanting to commit. He would adjust his MO, he would elude the police, and really remain completely unidentifiable to his victims. So, speaking of victims, one victim, a 24-year-old woman from Baton Rouge, recalled waking up to the sound of her sliding glass door being forced open. Her husband was tied up in the living room while Simonis dragged her into the bedroom. He whispered threats, told her he'd kill them both if she screamed, and then he raped her repeatedly. Afterwards, he calmly walked out, leaving behind a scene of devastation. Another survivor in Houston described how Simonis broke in while she was alone. He blindfolded her, tied her to the bed, and assaulted her for over an hour. Before leaving, he told her, "You'll never forget me." And she didn't. Years later, she testified in court. Her voice was obviously shaking, but resolute. As his assaults increased, so did his confidence and violence. Simonis victimized a 13-year-old girl who was babysitting. He forced her to perform oral sex on him. After the horrifying event, the young girl bravely told him he was going to be sorry because the house belonged to a cop. "No kidding?" was Simonis' response. "What time does he get home? I'll wait for him." And he did. He waited there with the girl until the officer and his wife returned home later that evening, then forced the couple to handcuff each other at gunpoint before assaulting the woman. During the attack, her husband tried to comfort her, asking softly if she was all right. Her response to her husband was, "He's being a gentleman." And this was extremely triggering for Simonis, and the remark caused him to act out in this explosive rage. And he then flipped her over, right, and ripped open her shirt, and then proceeded to beat her, like relentlessly, targeting her breast. And the woman would unfortunately have to undergo a double mastectomy in the months that followed. Simonis' attacks, they did follow a pattern. There was always entry through a sliding door or windows, the use of duct tape and blindfolds. He again targeted couples, sometimes women alone, but it seemed that he preferred couples. And then he also incorporated psychological manipulation and threats, minimizing physical evidence that was left behind. At the end of all of this, he would then steal anything that was pawnable.
Law enforcement struggled to connect the dots initially. The crimes had spanned, like we said before, multiple states, 12 states, and local police departments just did not have the resources or the extensive communication networks needed to link all of the cases. Each attack seemed isolated and random, which is exactly what Simonis wanted law enforcement to believe. Stealing and pawning items allowed him the luxury to move freely and frequently, not relying on a job for income. It was estimated that he would make up to $2,000 a month from the stolen goods. The other thing that's interesting and not surprising, because this seems to be kind of a repetitive theme in many of our cases, is Simonis kept a notebook detailing his crimes. He would record addresses, names of the victims, and even notes about the victims' routines. His records allowed him to remember the attacks, and the so-called data also served as encouragement to change his MO, which is wild to me that this man wrote down and documented all of this just to go back and double check to make sure that he doesn't have a traceable MO. Simonis's victims were rarely hit, kicked, or burned in the beginning, but as the thrills decreased with each attack, Simonis found that he needed to introduce more and more violence to experience the same high as before. And one of the things, and I know that I'm kind of guilty of this, is I compare a lot of things to addiction. And that's, I think, just my way of trying to understand things that are hard for me to understand, because addiction is an area that I understand. But in the clinical addiction world, we call this, chasing the high or chasing the dragon or whatever kind of slang you want to use. And there's a really great video on addiction, and it's like 30 seconds long, and it's called The Kiwi or something like that. And it's a short animated segment, and it's a kiwi that tries something, and it flies high in the air, and it's, everything's butterflies and rainbows and bright colors, and it's beautiful. And then it kind of crashes a little bit, but no big deal. And it goes through, and each time he tries to fly, and then towards the end cannot, and just crashes, and his body just becomes mangled. And all of that to say is, I imagine that it's the same way with perpetrators when it comes to seeking that kind of same high from their own kind of addictive behaviors. I digress. By 1981, this is when the FBI finally began to take notice. The infamous BAU or BSU, Behavioral Science Unit, was newly formed, and it was really starting to develop its methods. And this is where there was finally a pattern that was noticed, that this was not random violence in different states, that it was organized, it was ritualistic, and most unsettling of all, it was escalating. And that is when Dr. Ann Burgess entered the picture.
In the late 1970s, the FBI was facing a new kind of criminal, one who didn't fit the traditional mold. Serial killers and sexual predators were becoming more organized, more mobile, more psychologically complex. And you all have to remember, too, words like serial killer had to be invented, right? That was not a word that was used up until the 70s, right? When they had to start trying to figure out, how do we describe this type of predator? The agency also needed a new approach, and that's when the Behavioral Science Unit was born, and with it, a revolutionary partnership with a woman who would change the way law enforcement understood violent crime. Dr. Ann Wolbert Burgess was not a profiler. She was not a psychiatrist, but what she was a psychiatric clinical nurse specialist. She was also a SANE, which is a sexual assault nurse examiner. She was also, how many things can we say about Dr. Burgess? She was also a researcher.
And the coolest person ever.
Oh, and the coolest person ever. Oh my goodness. It was amazing being able to interview with her. And a pioneer in the field of victimology. Born in 1936 in Newton, Massachusetts, Burgess earned her Bachelor's of Science from Boston University and her Master's from the University of Maryland, and then her Doctorate of Nursing Science from Boston University. Her career began in hospitals, where she co-founded one of the first crisis counseling programs for rape victims at Boston City Hospital. Alongside sociologist Linda Lytle Holmstrom, Burgess conducted groundbreaking research on the psychological aftermath of sexual assault. Their work led to the identification of rape trauma syndrome, a concept that helped shift public and clinical understanding of sexual violence from a physical crime to a deeply psychological one. This research caught the attention of FBI specialist Agent Roy Hazelwood, who was helping to build the BSU at Quantico. Hazelwood invited Burgess to lecture agents on victimology and trauma. What began as a guest lecture turned into a long-term collaboration. Burgess joined forces with agents John Douglas and Robert Ressler, helping them develop the FBI's first criminal personality profiling program. At the time, the FBI was interviewing serial killers like Edmund Kemper, Ted Bundy, and Charles Manson, but their methods were inconsistent. Burgess brought scientific rigor to the process. She helped standardize interview questions, identify behavioral patterns, and apply psychological theory to offenders' motives. Her focus was always on the victim's experience, what they endured, how they responded, and what all of that could reveal about the perpetrator. And on top of that, she was a mom of 4 kids. Incredible. When the case of Jon Barry Simonis came to the FBI's attention, Ron Hazelwood reached out to Burgess and asked her for her assistance in profiling this serial rapist.
What they found was that Jon Simonis' crimes were not impulsive. They were planned, and they were also very organized. There was a lot of ritualism, and there was definitely some sadism. Dr. Burgess classified him as a vindictive rapist, and that is someone who inflicts pain not just for sexual gratification, but to punish and dominate. When asked why Simonis would force the male counterparts to watch as he assaulted the female victims, Dr. Burgess suggested that the perpetrator was driven by control, power, and the need to humiliate his victims. Furthermore, Dr. Burgess believed that this likely stemmed from the perpetrator witnessing or experiencing abuse as a child or an adolescent. And she noted that his choice of victims, usually attractive middle-class women, reflected a desire to assert power over those he perceived as socially superior. With Dr. Burgess's input, the FBI's behavioral science unit had finally built a detailed profile of the infamous ski mask rapist. Thanks to Dr. Burgess, they now knew what they were looking for. Male, in his late 20s or early 30s, had never been married, which is interesting to me. Domineering behavior, an alpha male, very meticulous and likely with military training. Sadistic, with the need, again, for control and humiliation. And another piece that Chelsea mentioned earlier is perfectionism. Part of the profile said he was likely a perfectionist who kept in good physical shape and clearly manicured appearance. He was mobile or a rover, crossing state lines to avoid detection. And crucially, there was a need to project potent masculinity. So this was a perpetrator who would likely drive a flashy, attention-grabbing car. And that last detail proved to be key.
In Gonzales, Louisiana, just outside Baton Rouge, local law enforcement received the FBI's profile and began watching for individuals who matched the description. One officer noticed a suspicious red 1981 Pontiac Trans Am while patrolling a neighborhood, and he thought that it seemed just kind of out of place. That night, police had received a report of a gunman wearing a ski mask that had assaulted a woman in the area nearby. Then they received another report. The women were attacked in the same manner by a man who was wearing a ski mask, and they were both robbed. The police officer, on a hunch, returned to the location of that cherry red Trans Am to find that it was no longer there. But in its place was one of the female victims' cars that Simonis had stolen and parked there. Furthermore, a pair of men's gloves were also found on the ground close to the stolen vehicle. Undercover agents began tailing the car. For a week, they followed Jon Barry Simonis everywhere he went, and he had no idea that he was being watched, which I find really interesting. You always hear of perpetrators who begin spiraling or who make mistakes, and I'm wondering if he got to that point where he just was starting to get almost sloppy. The surveillance team, trained in narcotics investigation, used their skills to stay hidden while documenting his movements. Lieutenant Butch Milan had stated, "Everywhere he was at, we were at." During one of the stakeouts, Simonis's behavior matched the FBI profile perfectly. He was methodical, solitary, and often drove late at night. A bolo had been issued, and within the month, agents finally pinned down the red 1981 Pontiac Trans Am and had enough information to feel confident in an arrest. In Lake Charles, Louisiana, on November 27, 1981, Jon Barry Simonis was arrested as he exited his car barefooted, carrying a loaf of bread and 2 packs of cigarettes. Police, upon searching the vehicle, found duct tape, gloves, and his notebook that had all of the information on all of his victims. The notebook contained addresses, the victims' names, disturbing notes, everything that they needed to put Simonis away. Surprisingly, Simonis didn't resist. In fact, upon being arrested, he confessed almost immediately.
Immediately after his arrest, Simonis began confessing to a spree of 81 rapes, armed robberies, and burglaries across 12 states. His first court appearance was in early December of 1981, and he appeared in court 6 times in December of that year. During these hearings, he repeatedly expressed remorse and admitted guilt. Simonis' defense team attempted to argue mental illness, but the prosecution countered with expert testimony from FBI profilers and psychologists. No surprise, that included insights from Dr. Ann Burgess's victimology research. This is where her work helped establish intent and pattern against Simonis proving that his crimes were not impulsive, but they were, in fact, calculated and sadistic. At a December 10th hearing in Donaldsonville, Louisiana, Simonis told Judge Charles Binsell this: "I am guilty of these crimes. I knew extremely well what I was doing beforehand while I was doing it, and I know now." As it's no surprise, there was a lot of back and forth as far as mental competency as far as Simonis' case. But in the end, Simonis was ruled mentally competent by a court-appointed sanity commission. And that same day, December 18th of 1981, he officially pled guilty to 8 charges: 3 counts of aggravated rape, 4 counts of armed robbery, 1 count of aggravated burglary. And so Judge Binsell sentenced him to the maximum penalties, which were 3 consecutive life sentences for the rapes, 99 years each for the 4 armed robberies, 30 years for the burglary, and that total ended up being 3 life terms plus 426 years. So, homeboy wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. The next month, in January of 1982, this came the final sentencing. After additional guilty pleas in other jurisdictions, Jon Simonis' total sentence had grown to 21 life sentences plus 2,690 years. Take that, France. He was transferred to Louisiana State Penitentiary at Angola. Now, it's important to note that there was no drama in this process, at least from Simonis. His courtroom appearances were swift, but relentless. He did not fight the charges. He seemed pretty determined to confess to everything. And perhaps, as his mother later claimed, this was to spare his family the pain of a prolonged trial. But his confessions did more than just seal his fate. They helped free the innocent and exposed the cracks in a justice system that had already convicted the wrong men.
See, and I have to say, it's so hard for me to agree with them saying that he was doing this to prevent any prolonged trial and prolonged pain for his family, just because in this process of other people, like there were so many rape cases, right? And we're about to get into some of the other innocent people who had been charged with these cases. But at one point, Jon Simonis had been told that this other guy had had done the crime in another case. And he was furious. He was like, "No, he didn't. That was mine. That was me." So kind of thinking about pick-me's, I think he absolutely wanted all of the glory. He wanted everybody to know that he was, not only did he commit all those crimes, but he was fully capable of committing all those crimes.
I definitely think it was more about notoriety than it was about, a thoughtful gesture.
Right. So when we talk about serial offenders, we often focus on the devastation they leave behind, the victims and the trauma and the fear. But sometimes the damage spreads even further. Sometimes the wrong person or persons pay the price. And that's exactly what happened in this case. So between 1975 and 1981, Simonis committed a staggering number of sexual assaults. So he has confessed to 80, but there have been upwards of like 130 that they think that he was actually involved in. over 12 states. And I know that we keep talking about that it spanned over 12 states, but we just want you to visualize like how much this guy traveled in that time. It was reported that in 1980, he put 80,000 miles on his vehicle in 10 months. That's how much he drove, surveying and looking for his victims. So in Bridge City, Texas, in April 1979, a woman and her teenage daughter were raped in their homes. Her son was also assaulted. The community was horrified, and under pressure to find a perpetrator, police arrested Clarence Von Williams, a local refinery worker with no criminal record. The case against him rested on eyewitness identifications. Always a shaky foundation. If you guys have listened to any of our other stuff on false memories, it can be a tricky thing. Despite his protest, Williams was convicted and sentenced to 50 years in prison. But just 2 months later, everything changed. Barry Simonis, already in custody for a string of similar crimes, confessed to the Bridge City assault. He described details that had never been made public, details only the true attacker could have known, and Clarence Von Williams was released on December 4th, 1981, after spending over a year behind bars for a crime that he didn't commit. Then, in Lancaster, Ohio, there was Bradley Cox. Now Cox had been convicted of 2 rapes and robberies and was serving a sentence of 56 to 200 years. But again, Simonis, who lived near Cox in Ohio, came forward and confessed to those crimes as well. He even stated under oath that he had never met Cox and that Cox had no involvement whatsoever. And thanks to that confession, Cox was released in January of 1982. But here's the haunting part. How many more Clarence Von Williams or Bradley Coxes are still out there? How many people are sitting in prison for crimes they didn't commit? Crimes that someone like Simonis actually did. And that's a part of this case that really is truly haunting. And it's a chilling reminder that justice isn't just about catching the guilty, but also about protecting the innocent.
In 1984, FBI profilers Roy Hazelwood and Ken Lanning sat down inside Louisiana's Angola prison with a man whose crimes had haunted the South, Jon Barry Simonis, the ski mask rapist. Over a span of 7 hours, they recorded one of the most unsettling, calm confessions ever given. Simonis entered the room in a plain white prison shirt, serious, but very polite. Hazelwood began simply by asking, "What are you incarcerated for?" And Jon Simonis answered without any hesitation. He said, "A series of armed robberies and rapes, about 140 in all." His voice was steady and analytical. It felt less like a confession and more like a performance review. He told the FBI agents that his first assault had happened back in 1978 as a botched burglary. And when confronted by a woman he'd followed home, he ended up binding her and forced her to perform sexual acts. At the time, he was nervous and impotent, and so he told these profilers, "I was unable to get an erection at the time." And by the end of this spree, he had admitted that the crimes had just progressed. They progressed heavily. He described the violence as a very deliberate act, that it was in fact a way to inflict fear, humiliation, and in his words, total control. Jon Simonis explained his careful planning, that he would cut phone lines, he would bring rope, duct tape, and handcuffs. He called himself, quote, "a thinking criminal," that he was obsessed with perfecting every single step in the process. just in hopes of heightening his thrill and reducing the risk of being caught. The adrenaline rush, he said, was a different high than sex itself. Breaking into someone's home, knowing he might be caught, that was its own intoxication.
When asked how he chose his victims, Simonis said he targeted wealthy women, those wearing diamonds, driving nice cars, living in comfortable neighborhoods. "I'd follow them home," he said flatly. "If I didn't hit them, I'd hit someone in their neighborhood." He described his fascination with their fear. Calling it fuel. The reaction, the panic, the trembling was the real reward. He admitted to peeping in obscene phone calls years before the rapes and told the agents those early acts were just as thrilling. He masturbated up to 12 times a day, fueled by bondage and domination fantasies. From childhood, he said, he'd been aroused by images of naked women in pain. It wasn't the nudity, he said. It was the knife and the fear on her face. By the interview's end, Simonis revealed that he was serving 21 life sentences plus over 2,000 years. Zero possibility for parole, he said quietly. Then he added one final thought. He said he was glad to have been caught because by then, rape no longer excited him, but the thought of murder was becoming increasingly more exciting.
And I think that speaks to what we were talking about earlier, Chelsea, was there's always that ulterior motive that we were questioning at the beginning of this case was this, for his mom and his family? And I think that if he claims that he was a calculated risk taker, that murder was much more jeopardizing than rape. I don't know.
Yeah, and he went on. So, like I said, there's a ton of really great books and information out on this case, but just simply that he was getting bored. He was like, I just am getting bored with the whole rape process, even as I increase the violence. And Dr. Burgess, when she was in the process of profiling him, they had asked her, do you think this is going to cross that threshold and he's going to start murdering? And she was like, oh, absolutely. If he's given enough time, if we don't catch him, he'll absolutely do that. So I found that fascinating that he, without being prompted, gave up that information, saying like, I'm pretty much glad I was caught, which that's a weird statement, that he was glad he was caught because he was tiptoeing into becoming a murderer. I don't know. It was just a bizarre, like I said, looking into the minds of some of these predators really, truly is bizarre.
Yeah. Now, according to Hazelwood, Jon Barry Simonis showed little genuine empathy for his victims throughout these interviews. Instead, Simonis was fascinated by the power he held over his victims. He spoke of his crimes with a really disturbing detachment, which offered a rare but still very disconcerting and unsettling glimpse into the mind of a man who terrorized communities for years. Simonis' interviews helped shape the FBI's early understanding of sexual sadism, power resurgence, rapists, and the escalation patterns of serial offenders. His case became a case study, quite literally, in how criminal profiling could be used not just to catch predators, but to also understand them. Today, Jon Barry Simonis remains incarcerated at Angola, one of the most notorious prisons in the United States. He is 74 years old. He will never be released, but his legacy, if we can call it that, is a dark one. He left behind a trail of trauma, but also a blueprint, a roadmap for law enforcement to better understand, identify, and stop predators like him before they strike again. And maybe, just maybe, that's the only good thing that can come from the horror that he unleashed.
I was thinking about it, and I'm trying to remember, Bailey. I don't know if we have covered a serial rapist case.
I don't think so, actually.
And, like we do cover murders quite often. We've covered, white collar and red collar crime and some silly crimes, if you will, right? But I got to thinking, because we have not covered a serial rapist before, I guess I've never really sat in and, had to dig through the case from beginning to end. And it really is such a haunting thing, because you think of the victims, right? And the fact that he was saying upwards of 140 women that he victimized. Now, he never physically assaulted men. He would make women perform like sexual acts on their partner and then like perform a sexual act on him. But he never would, physically rape a man. But again, like, you take the 140, allegedly 140 women, and then all of their partners. I mean, Bailey, that is hundreds of people victimized by one guy. By one person. He did it all by himself. He had no help. He had nobody that he, was in cahoots with. That is baffling to me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember where I heard this. I don't remember if it was a quote from, like a detective in 48 Hours, or if it was from like Criminal Minds, the TV show. Like, I don't remember where I heard it. But it sticks out so much to me. And it was this person, excuse me, who was basically saying that home invaders or home intruders are the most terrifying types of people, because they were describing, like, it's one thing if, a random offense happens, or you're at the gas station, or you're at the grocery store, or it's a dark alley. But for somebody to walk completely, quite literally, into the dark, into the unknown, into somebody else's bubble, you don't know where the doors are, you don't know where the light switches are, you don't know where their guns are kept, if they have any, you don't know the layout of the house, nothing. But just to walk into a territory that is so utterly foreign, yet so incredibly well known to your target victim. This person was like, it's the most wildly like grotesque and super confident and horrifically, horrifyingly scary dynamic.
And that was a big part of the profiling, is they kept using this word macho. And I know now that was obviously a super common term, I feel like, for the late 70s, right? And early 80s. I mean, my goodness, what is it? Who is it that sings YMCA? What are those guys called? The Village People?
Yeah.
Like, they even had the Macho Man song, right? But they were talking about that was a huge, like, central focus, central attribute of Simonis, was just he wanted to be macho. And he wanted everybody to know that he was the main character. And I think that really goes hand in hand with what you're talking about, like the audacity that it takes to go into a house that's completely foreign, even if you've stalked, and even if you've been looking and watching it, you haven't been inside yet, right? And to take that step and just like, yeah, I'm going to march into this person's house. I'm going to absolutely take control of the situation. I mean, it's next level ego. And it's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know. Again,
It's so scary. Well, and again, they talk about this a lot in the Simonis case, where he just had this, he would describe it as a cat and mouse game, right? And he played it not only with his victims, but he played it with the police. He played it with anybody who he could play with, if you will.
yeah.
And I don't know. And again, it's so frustrating, right? And that's, I think, why I wanted us to start with that quote, where he just was like, I don't know. Some people I was nice to, some people I wasn't. Some people I would hit, some people I would do nothing to. Like, I don't know. It was kind of complex, I guess. And the fact that I'm like, you really don't know? Like, for you being as smart and as well thought out and as calculated as you are, you don't know? I don't know, Bailey. Like, that's another aspect that's baffling to me, because I feel like I know why I do what I do. Like, if someone were to ask, why do you do what you do? Why do you devote your time? Why do you volunteer? Why do you get involved? I have really good reasons for everything that I do.
Right.
And just to be like an aspect of your life that took up so much of your time, why did you do that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
for me to know and you to find out. I mean, what is this?
Yeah. Well, on a side note, if you want to hear something kind of cringy, I mean, this whole case has been kind of cringy, but this is a Bailey cringe. Like, I still get a little cringe when I think about it. But when we first started our podcast journey, I was dead set on interviewing perpetrators. I was like, oh, totally. Like, we're going to interview perpetrators.
Wow.
And one of our big kind of like perpetrator case was, oh God, he's the worst. The Bayou Strangler, Ronald Dominique.
Yeah.
And he's in Angola. And Angola is infamous. Like, everybody knows Angola, especially, around down here. And I was like, that's cool. Like, I'll just interview him. The ignorance was so big. I'm a much wiser person. So I straight up Google Angola prison, Louisiana State Penitentiary. And I call them up and I'm like, hey. And they're like, this is Deputy such and such department, blah, 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 can I help you? And I was like, yes, I would like to inquire who I would need to speak with about interviewing a inmate. And they were just like, okay, inmate's name. I was like, Ronald Dominique. And she was just like, okay, I'm going to transfer you. This girl was like, homegirl, you're dumb. And this is above my pay grade. And I don't understand, she was probably like, these dumb people and their obsessions with true crime. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they transferred me over and I spoke with somebody over there. And I was like, hi, I'd like to interview Ronald Dominique. Because I just, I was just like, you can just interview him. Just, whatever.
Yeah, ask him what's up.
Ask him what's up. And she was like, ma'am, if she could say bless your heart, she would have said bless your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, yeah, that's not how it works. She was like, do you have a press badge? And I'm like, no. And she was like, okay. Yeah. So no, absolutely not. That's not happening.
Ma'am, do you work for the FBI? Are you part of the behavioral science unit?
And I'm like, my dumbass. I'm just like, no. But so what's the probs? And she was just like, ma'am, no, you have to, and she was very nice. Again, she probably got off that phone call was like, these stupid people. But she was just like, ma'am, you have to understand, there are a lot of things that these prisoners are not allowed to speak about. So we do not allow press interviews. And I went down this well, why can't they talk about it? And then I was like, oh, well, they don't have freedom of speech. You know what I mean? He can't, there are things that he cannot say that he's, gag ordered or, whatever. And most inmates, and especially at Angola, like, listen, y'all want to talk about, all you protesters and talk about harsh prison environments, y'all need to make your way down to old Angola.
Well, I think it's better living inside Angola than it would be in the swamps outside of Angola.
Chelsea hates the South, you guys. I just want you to know it.
I hate
She
it.
hates it. She hates it so bad. I was like, hey, I called her up the other day and I was like, hey, I have this great idea for an Airbnb. Like, I'm going to invest into this rental property and blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to do it in the bayou. And Chelsea was like, I said, so what do you think? Like, isn't this a great idea? And she was like, Bailey, I don't know how to say this, but I would quite literally rather die than stay one night in that shithole Airbnb that you want to make.
Yeah, I was like, I would literally rather die. I would rather pluck out each one of my leg hairs than stay a night on the bayou. I'm sorry. It's not my jam.
Yeah, she hates it. So no offense to all you people who live out in all the deep bayou parishes over in Louisiana. By the way, I have to get a Mardi Gras shirt that says Louisiana, just as a hail to our great, wonderful Lil Wayne. So
yeah. Lil Weezy.
Lil Weezy, the black.
I like a lot of things about it. I like the music. I like the people. I like the food.
But you hate
I just really hate the swamp. I hate the way it smells. I hate the way it looks at me. It's shady. I don't know what it's about to do.
Well, prison wouldn't be a deterrent. Putting you in a swamp would be a deterrent.
Well, that's the thing. That's what they say about Angola. They were like, people stay in. They don't have very many prison breaks because where are you going to end up, friend? You're going to break out of your 4x4 cell. How big? I don't know how big they are. And you're going to go where? You're going to go in swamps. You're going to live in the alligators and with snakes and malaria and the mosquitoes and the Zika virus. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to live there? Okay. You go right on ahead, friend.
Eating bacteria that's already claimed a bunch of lives between here and the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Like, you scratch your leg and your body touches water and you get a gross staph infection and you die.
No, it skips the flesh. It just goes straight for the brain and you don't even know you're dying. And it's just like, ha, 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 like banjo playing the whole time. Like, it's terrible. Terrible.
About as terrible as Jon Bob Simonis. Who did we just do? Jon Barry Simonis. Whatever. He's the worst. # he's the worst. Yeah, well, as always, you guys, we're gonna wrap it up there on a good note. And as always, thanks for hanging out with us through this wild and crazy ride.
And we'll catch you on the wild side.
Bye, guys.
Later, Gators.
Hey, Wildside Tribe, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Wildside Podcast. Make sure to tune in on Wildside Wednesdays. New episodes will drop each Wednesday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We would love to hear from you, so if you have a wild case recommendation, email us at wildsidepodcast@gmail.com. That's wildside with a C. Or share your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you haven't heard it today, you're loved, you're worthy, and you're valuable. And we'll catch you on the flip side.